Well,
How
hello there.
are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you.
Too. How are things?
Good. I'm just, hanging out in Rochester. Where are you a Texas girl now?
We we are officially a Texan girl. I'm working with the Fort Worth Symphony right now.
After sufficiently stalking your bio this morning, I can see you've been very busy the whole many years since you've been at the Dallas Opera. You did Heart Institute. Was it 2015 or?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
2015. It was one of the most incredible opportunities of my life, and I'll just always treasure that experience. So,
Can you tell me about what um, some of the most memorable moments for that first experience at the Heart Institute?
absolutely. I loved working with Emmanuel, as you mentioned, and the other mentors that were there. And for me, their level of investment and the intensity with which they approached our work is just something that has always stuck with me, something that I always want to bring to the table as a musician, as a conductor, as a teacher, because I feel like one of the reasons I was really able to grow during that time so much was the people around us were also supportive. And I have to include the orchestra. For me, I had the opportunity to return to Dallas this spring to conduct a concert at the North Park Center. And it felt like coming home because the orchestra was so engaged during that process. And there was one moment in particular as I was conducting Bizet's entr'acte from Carmen. And I had this feeling all of a sudden that the orchestra was reading my mind. thing about conducting when you're able to join together with an ensemble in a way where you're all on the same page and it doesn't feel, it's the ultimate collaboration. I don't know how to say it any better, but this was one of my earliest experiences conducting. And I want to underline that because I think one of the amazing things that the Heart Institute does is not just create opportunities for women that are already conductors. They recognize we need more women conductors. End of story. It's kind of that chicken or egg experience where everyone wants you to have the experience before they give you the experience.
Right.
And to have a company that was willing to invest in me and help me make that transition at such a critical time in my career was, I'll forever be grateful for that.
That was one of the things that we all remember too about you is that you were able to go sort of, beyond the score and into this sort of magical musical tentacle world where we're all connecting on that other level, which is really, really special. And I think another thing that was so unique about you too is that you had already had so much experience in opera on all the levels. I mean, you were an amazing pianist. I see your beautiful piano back there. So when was it that you decided, or at least were inspired, to go from pianist to conductor?
You know, it's interesting because I was just having a conversation with a colleague yesterday where I said, I should have known much sooner that I wanted to conduct. I remember standing up in front of an orchestra in the 9th grade, subbing in for my teacher. I was a violinist, and she had to go to the office for whatever reason. And I just remember thinking like, yes, we can make music. And you know, I music directed our Newsies musical in the 9th grade as well. Like there were all these things that I'm like, Stephanie, why didn't you put the pieces together sooner? But honestly, first of all, I didn't know there was the opportunity to work in opera as a pianist. And you didn't really see women conductors professionally. And it just didn't cross my mind that that was an opportunity, as terrible as that might sound.
Well, that's the truth, and that's the climate we're in. So when was that sort of spark?
So I had the opportunity to participate in the Houston Grand Opera Studio as a pianist and coach. And on our very first production that I was on, Elixir of Love, I was doing backstage conducting, which can look like a number of things for an opera production. In this case, I was standing on a crate so the whole chorus could see me, and I was clapping. And, you know, I had some great mentors that were helping me figure out all the inner workings of an opera. And that time, I'll never forget being part of that and thinking, I think this is what I want. There's no direct path to becoming a conductor. It's such an interesting process. And for me, really mastering the musicianship, the art form, working with singers extensively, chorus mastering, I felt like I was just building all of these skill sets that really prepare you to be a conductor. It's not just about standing up and waving your arms. You know, there's so, especially in opera, there's just so much, so many layers. And that's why I love opera so much. The languages alone, I mean.
And so I learned you are a Russian specialist. You won a Fulbright to go to Russia and study there. And then you came back and you transliterated Iolanta for us at the Dallas Opera. So that is super amazing. Where did your love of language come from, and why Russian specifically?
I always loved language, and I remember studying it. You know, I had French in school, and I had exposure to Spanish a lot. I have Spanish speakers in my family. But my father is a doctor, and I remember at about age 10, him coming home at one point with some cassette tapes that were Russian language cassette tapes. He had a Russian patient. And he was just trying to learn a few things. And I remember sitting down with those cassette tapes and like going through all the numbers and just being totally fascinated by it. Because even at an early age, I just had that fascination with culture, with language. And once I was in opera and grad school, I had another teacher and mentor, underlining the importance of mentors here, Martin Katz at the University of Michigan, who asked me to work as a vocal coach and pianist for a production of Eugene Onegin. And Tchaikovsky's masterful opera, just in case anyone doesn't know. And he said, the thing is, if you're going to work on this, you have to be prepared to coach the language. That really started this relationship with Russian music, with the Russian language. And I really dove first into pronunciation because as a coach, that's the most critical aspect. But it's so important because they characterize the music. And I really don't think you can fully understand the music if you don't understand the character of the language. And then the Fulbright opportunity was really life-changing because the ability to focus on the language, living in Moscow, and simultaneously I had the opportunity to work at the Bolshoi Theater with their Young Artist program, and coaching in Russian every day. You learn it when you have to speak it. So
yeah, when you're totally immersed. Exactly. First of all, amazing that you mentioned Martin Katz and University of Michigan. I don't know if you know this, but I too am a UM grad.
Go Blue! I finished my graduate degree in 2009.
I finished my undergrad degree in 2009.
We were there at the same time.
So I kind of remember I was upset because I didn't get to play Eugene Onegin. But you know what I did play that year, or maybe the year after, which was my first opera ever? La Boheme.
Okay, I remember that cast. That was with Janai Brugger Orman.
Yes, talk about another superstar. And you remember the really awful harpist, because that was me then. Yeah, that was me. And because again, like I mean, I loved ensemble stuff. I was like, I'm a symphony harpist and I've done all these symphonies, but I had never done opera and I had no idea how hard it was. And poor Martin Katz, like he was so sweet, but they learned my name almost immediately because I was so lost the whole time. So fun fact. Anyway, here we
all have to learn somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. Since your graduation from obviously from University of Michigan, then you've gone through all these programs, the Hart Institute, you're now really one of the star alums. I mean, you've performed and conducted all of, San Francisco, Washington National Opera, Houston, Dallas, and now you're so tell us, what is the conducting fellowship program in Fort Worth Symphony? Is it one person? Are you like the assistant conductor, or how long does that program go?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a 2-year program, and there's actually 2 of us, and we do all the education program conducting. We do a lot of community outreach concerts, and then we cover all of the pops and the classical series. And it's really a fantastic program. They incorporate lab sessions so that we have the opportunity to go through a lot of the symphonic repertoire. As we've talked about, my background is opera, right? So after the Hart Institute, I really realized that I really wanted to hone my technique and focus on conducting in the symphonic framework as well, because there's so much to learn there. It's interesting how in the classical music industry, like opera is so different from symphonic. And it's, you probably wouldn't realize, other than the singing component and the staging, the obvious things, even, the pace at which you move through repertoire, like when you're in opera, you're on a piece for, months, literally. And then in the symphonic context, you're doing a new program every week. And there's so much to be learned from both sides of the table, from both experiences. And so I've loved having the opportunity to be with Fort Worth Symphony. And it's actually been great because I've been able to do some projects with Dallas Opera as well. So I'm still able to merge my love of both.
That's so amazing. And what I find super inspiring about you too is that now you are giving back. You have founded the Women's Arts Leadership Initiative, which is beautiful. And now you're helping to empower young female artists. Can you tell us more about this program and how you started it?
Absolutely. So actually, after the Hart Institute, one of my major takeaways was how little we learn about business as artists, and what a critical role that actually plays in all of our careers. Almost all artists will freelance at some point, but we spend so much time dedicated to perfecting our craft, and we have to be competitive. Like, it requires that singular focus, but then there's this completely other realm of business skills, leadership skills that we just are never exposed to. And throughout my professional experience, I was noticing a lack of women in general. And that wasn't just in conducting and in administration, even on music staff. And the more that I looked around and looked into it, studies were also supporting that. And there's been a lot of dialogue around that in the industry recently, which I appreciate, but I believe that true change needs to start earlier. So we founded Women's Artistic Leadership Initiative in the hopes of educating young women in leadership skills and business acumen. And our focus is an undergraduate age range, although we have plans to expand our programs. And we host a summer leadership intensive where we really dive into all of these skills that are required to run a business. And we also talk a lot about the mentality of treating yourself as a business, that you are your company. As an artist, you need to be able to market yourself. You need to understand the finances behind it, the legal logistics, and setting up a business entity, all of these things that go into it. And one thing that I really love about Women's Ally is that we incorporate all the arts disciplines. So it actually removes some of those silos. So last year, for example, in our summer leadership intensive, we had a harpist, we had pianists, but we also had film animators, and we had graphic design and theater teachers that were studying theater education. And so our goal is really to start a larger conversation within the arts industry and to encourage collaboration among them as they're taking on these steps. So ultimately, we want to create community leaders, be it in the arts, be it in how they're giving back to their community. We want them to feel empowered to take whatever career path they might choose, but have the skills to do it successfully.
Love it. Well, Stephanie, this has been so amazing catching up with you, and we're so glad to have you as, you know, a part of the Heart Institute's, you know, history. You kicked us off with a bang, and, you know, it's just so great to follow you, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon in the pit or on stage somewhere.
You take care.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.